morning, everyone. Before we open the floor, I want to put our destination on the table so we do not lose sight of it during the debate. This roundtable has one goal to leave this room with a joint action plan or on carbon reduction and renewable energy investment that each of our constituencies can endorse. Based on the pre-meeting consultation, the four agreed solution we are here to confirm and negotiate the details. The details of are this. First is carbon equivalence recognition. Second is renewable energy transition fund. Third is differentiated phase-in. And the last one is harmonized carbon measurement standard. Still, Core Global is not opposed to climate action. We have reduced our own emissions by 38% since 2015 and are actively investing in green hydrogen and electric arc furnace technology. But CBAM as currently designed punish manufacturers in countries that already have their own carbon pricing system. We pay a carbon price at home and a carbon tariff at the EU border. That is double taxation, and it is why we are all here.
I appreciate the candor. Indonesia export significant quantities of steel, cement, and aluminum to EU. CBAM will cost Indonesia exporter an estimation 1.2 billion US dollar annually by 2030. Our industry have invested in clean production under our national ETS. The Indonesia Carbon Exchange launched in 2023. The Paris Agreement enshrined common but differentiated responsibility. Without a recognition of comparable carbon market, CBAM simply green protectionism wearing the clothes of climate policy.
I have to push back before that framing set the tone. CBAM exists precisely because global carbon leakage is real companies were offshoring carbon intensive productions to avoid pricing. The climate justice community does not celebrate tariff, but we cannot allow climate ambitions to be undermined by exemptions that create new loopholes. The question today is not whether CBAM should exist, it is how its design and revenue can be made fair and how those revenue fund the renewable energy transitions the most vulnerable communities desperately need.
Hold your perspective content truth. Let me add the technological dimension because it changed the calculus. The carbon reduction solution we need already exists. Solar photovoltaic costs have dropped 90%. In a decade, utility-scale solar is now the cheapest electricity source in history. Onshore, wind is equally competitive. For heavy industry like steel, green hydrogen produced from the hydroelectric and wind power is the credible pathway near to zero emission. The barrier is not technology, it is an investment certainty to deploy it at scale. A well-designed CBAM, one that price carbon fairly and recycle revenue into clean energy infrastructure, can be that investment signal. The current design just does not do that yet. I want to focus in the conversation on calibration, not bulliation.
But sorry, Kyril, you say collaboration, but who calibrates? EU does unilaterally. Developing country had no seat at the table when CBAM was designed. This is a mechanism written by the world's largest trading bloc to serve its own industrial interests, with climate as just signification.
The minister is correct on process. CBAM compliance requires 147 separate data fields per shipment. We have the resources to manage that barely. A mid-sized Indonesian cement producer does not. We risk creating a world where only large multinationals can afford to export to Europe.
Aquila, your company's 38% reduction is commendable, but steel core's absolute emissions still exceed 40 million tons per year. And Minister Indonesia National ETS cover only 70 powers plant at under $3 per ton compared to the EU ETS at over $60. They are not equivalent system. We cannot pretend otherwise.
So because our economy is still developing, you cannot ask Indonesia to price carbon at EU level while our per capita income is 1/8 of Germany. The Paris Agreement exists precisely for this reason.
This tension is legitimate, but I want to connect it to the renewable energy opportunity because that reframes the argument. Indonesia has exceptional solar irradiance, significant geothermal resources, and untapped hydroelectric potential in Kalimantan and Sulawesi. If CBAM revenue are directed toward financing and those renewable energy, rather than sitting in the EU budget, Indonesia own green industrial transition accelerate its ETS price naturally rise as the fossil fuels become less competitive and the equivalence gap close organically. The problem is not the carbon price gap today. The problem is that CBAM revenue are currently funding European fiscal consolidation rather than the renewable energy build-out that would close the gap.
On that, I agree completely. CBAM revenue project at 9 billion euro annually by 2030 go directly into the EU budget. Not 1 euro is guaranteed for developing nations' decarbonizations or renewable energy deployment. That is indefensible. Before we debate threshold, I need everyone here to agree that revenue redistributions toward clean energy investment is non-negotiable.
We can support that. Steel Core is already piloting solar-powered arc furnace at our Surabaya facility. Scaling that requires the kind of green energy infrastructure that CBIM revenues could help finance, but the fund must also include technical assistance for carbon measurement. Smaller suppliers simply do not know how to report embedded emissions under EU methodology.
Okay, let me propose a framework that connects the carbon pricing debate to the renewable energy investment agenda, because I believe that link is what makes a deal possible. One, a bilateral equivalence protocol recognizing national ETS system above a minimum threshold of $15 per ton, subject to third-party audit. Two, a renewable energy transition fund funded by 25 to 30% of CBAM revenue, specifically earmarked for solar, wind, and hydroelectric project in developing exporting nation with a joint governance board. Three, a five-year differentiated pass in a for low-income exporters tied to measurable renewable energy deployment milestone. And four, of harmonized carbon measurement methodology through the WTO or UNFCCC. Can each of you tell me where you
Uh,
stand?
$15 threshold is still significant X, but if the renewable energy transition fund include direct investment in Indonesia solar and hydro capacity structure as investment not conditionally, Indonesia could engage constructively. My red line is CBAM cannot apply identically to developing and OECD nation. There must be gradation tied to development status and Paris Agreement commitment.
Steel Core strongly supports the harmonized methodology and the Renewable Energy Fund. Our compliance cost is overwhelmingly in measurement and reporting, not the certificate price. If the fund also covers technical assistance for supply chain decarbonization, helping our Indonesian suppliers transition to solar-powered production, industry can adapt far faster. My red line is no double carbon pricing, and we accept third-party auditing. We do not accept paying twice.
25% is below our ask, we want 30. But if the fund is generally governed with global south veto authority, not advisory status, and if the mandate accessibility prioritize solar, wind, and hydroelectric deployment in climate renewable nations, the Global Climate Justice Network can bring our coalition's partner on board. My red line is governance and use clean energy investment for communities on the front line of climate change, not a slush fund for industrial retrofits in wealthy nations.
There is a convergence. I did not expect this quickly. Minister, would Indonesia commit to raising its ETS price floor to $10 by 2027 if the Renewable Energy Transition Fund includes direct co-financing for Indonesia solar and hydro projects?
If the support is structured as investment, not conditionally, yes, Indonesia is not asking to be exempt for climate responsibility. We are asking to be supported in meeting it through our own renewable energy potential.
Investment, not conditionality. I want that language explicitly in any joint statement we issue.
Agreed. And still Core will commit to piloting the harmonized measurement methodology in our Indonesian supply chain and publishing the result. Someone has to go first.
Okay, for the record, I will summarize the 4 points of consensus this roundtable has reached to be escalated to the UNFCCC Technical Expert Committee. And the first one is Butter Equivalence Protocol. CBAM certificates shall be reduced in proportion to verifiable national carbon pricing above a minimum threshold of $15 per ton, subject to third-party audit. And the second one is Renewable Energy Transition Fund. No less than 25% of CBAM revenues shall flow to a multilateral fund earmarked for solar, wind, and hydroelectric projects in developing exporting nation, governed by a joint board with a mandatory developing country representation and genuine veto authority. And the third one is differentiated phase-in. LDCs and lower middle income exporters shall receive a 5-year extended phase-in period with technical and financial assistance for emission measurement and renewable energy deployment, structured as investment and unconditionality. And the fourth one is harmonized measurement methodology. The EU, in cooperation with UNFCCC and WTO, shall develop a globally accepted standard for embedded carbon calculation, replacing the current EU-only methodology by 2027.
This framework does not give Steelcore everything we came for, but it gives industry a path to compliance that does not penalize early movers. We will pilot the measurement standards ourselves. We will publish the data, and also we will invest the renewable energy transition alongside our supply chain partners. Credible global rules, even imperfect ones, are better than the current chaos.
Indonesia entered this process cautiously, but in good faith. We have always been willing to raise our climate ambition we needed. Evidence that the international system will support rather than penalize that ambition through investment in our solar, hydro, and geothermal potential. Today is small but genuine step. We will hold everyone accountable and expect to be held accountable in return.
Climate justice, not climate ambitions, are not opposite. A fund that directs CBAM revenue towards renewable energy in the communities most harmed by climate change is not charity, it is the minimum that equity demands. The Global Climate Justice Network will monitor every commitment made today. Accountability is how agreements survive contact with reality.
The technologies to decarbonize the global economy, solar, wind, hydroelectric, green hydrogen, are measured, cost competitive, and ready to deploy at scale. The barrier has never been technological. It has been the policy and financial architecture to make deployment happen where it is needed the most. A well-calibrated CBAM that price carbon fairly and recycle revenue into a clean energy infrastructure in the developing world can be that architecture. What was agreed today is that technically viable. What happens next depends entirely on political will. Okay, I think that's all for today meetings, and thank you everyone.
Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
Thank you.
you.